On June 12, 1942, 13-year-old Anne Frank received a diary for her birthday and began writing in it, addressing her entries to a friend she called Kitty. "I hope I will be able to confide everything to you, as I have never been able to confide in anyone," she wrote, "and I hope you will be a great source of comfort and support." On this International Holocaust Remembrance Day, the 76th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, we invite you to listen to the words of 18 young writers who kept diaries inside the Jewish ghettos of Europe. Their observations and reflections deepen our understanding of the daily lives of young people during the Holocaust and remind us how much young people can contribute to the historical and literary record of our times. We begin in Vilna, Lithuania, with 14-year-old Yitzhak Rudashevsky, who wrote in his diary about leaving home and walking through the streets of his beloved city to the sealed ghetto.
It is the 6th of September, 1941. A beautiful sunny day has risen. The streets are closed off by Lithuanians. The streets are turbulent. A ghetto is being created for Vilna Jews. People are packing in the house. I go around with bleary eyes among the bundles, see how we are being uprooted overnight from our home. I look at the house in disarray, at the bundles, at the perplexed, desperate people. I see things scattered that were dear to me, that I was accustomed to use. We carry the bundles to the courtyard. A woman stands in despair among her bundles and does not know how to cope with them, weeps and wrings her hands. Suddenly, everything around me begins to weep. Everything weeps. I walk burdened and irritated. The Lithuanians drive us on, to not let us rest. I think of nothing. Not what I am losing, not what I have just lost, not what is in store for me. I do not see the streets before me, the people passing by. I only feel that I am terribly weary. I feel that an insult, a hurt, is burning inside me. Here is the ghetto gate. I feel that I have been robbed. My freedom is being robbed from me, my home, and the familiar Vilna streets I love so much. Finally, I'm on the other side of the gate. I find my parents, and here we are in the ghetto house. Besides the 4 of us, there are 11 persons in the room. The room is a dirty and stuffy one. It is crowded. The first ghetto night. I do not sleep. In my ear resounds the lamentation of this day.
In eastern Poland, Renia Spiegel, age 18, wrote in her diary about her very first days in the ghetto. Separated from her mother and her boyfriend Sigmund, she prayed to God to be reunited with them and to survive to see better times.
July 15th, 1942. Remember this day. Remember it well. You will tell generations to come. Since 8 o'clock today, we have been shut away in the ghetto. I live here now. The world is separated from me, and I'm separated from the world. The days are terrible, and the nights are not at all better. Every day brings more casualties, and I keep praying to you, God Almighty, to let me kiss my dear mama. Oh, Great One, give us health and strength. Let us live. Hope is shriveling so fast. There are fragrant flowers in the front of the house, but who needs flowers? And Sigmund, I saw him from a distance today, but he hasn't come over yet. Lord, please protect his dear head. Why can't I cuddle up next to him? God, let me hug my dear mama. July 18th, 1942. Days go by. They're all the same, like drops of rain. Evenings are the most pleasant. We sit in the yard in front of the house. We talk, joke, and breathing in the fragrance of the garden, I manage to forget that I live in the ghetto, that I have so many worries, that I feel lonely and poor, that Z is a stranger to me, that despite all my longing, I cannot get closer to him. Here in the yard, doves coo. The moon's crescent silently floats into the sky. I was on the verge of tears 3 times today. I blame living conditions, but love can flourish anywhere. And yet, shadows always flit on my path. Where do those shadows come from? My heart aches so badly. I don't want to ask God for anything else, only for our survival.
Not far away, 14-year-old David Rubinowitz was struggling to adjust to his first days in the Bodzenshin ghetto. As news of senseless violence against Jews reached him, he recorded his fears in his diary.
At home, everything was different from here. There was always something to occupy you. Here I go out into the street, but in no time at all, I'm back. What's there for me to do in the street? Someone at home said that in Krajno, 4 Jewish persons had been shot while walking in the direction of Kielce. 2 persons had only been wounded with bayonets, and 2, a mother and her son, were dead. When you hear endlessly of such atrocities, how can you live calmly, without fear?
In a region of Ukraine called Transnistria, Romanian Jews exiled from their homes not by the Nazis, but by the Romanian government of Ion Antonescu, were stripped of their rights, deprived of the means to make a living, and forced to live in unsealed ghettos. Miriam Korber, age 18, described in her diary the freezing cold misery of a day in a ghetto called Jurin.
Friday, December 26, 1941. Will we be able to survive these times? Everyone asks himself this question, including me. Will we have the strength to get over this hardship? We managed to eat somehow, and still, everyone looks bad. Last night, the north wind started to blow. A true Ukrainian north wind, the wind of the steppe. It blows into our room. It roars and squalls, and we feel the gusts of wind here on the hill so much that you think that the house is being lifted up in the air. This morning I went for water with Sissy. Came back crying. The bitter cold had numbed my right hand. I could feel a tightness around my heart, and I almost fell down 3 times on the way. What times we live in. Dad is nervous. Mom is nervous. We don't make any money, and the money we have is just disappearing. We do have something to eat. We're used to eating better than others, perhaps. Dad cannot get used to the laziness of doing nothing all day, so he consumes his energy by quarreling with us. We are on each other's nerves only because there is nothing to keep us busy. It is 2 in the afternoon. It is cold in the room, and I don't know how we will resist till evening without a fire. Firewood is so expensive. I can see on everyone's face the fear of tomorrow. What will happen? How will we live when we run out of money? There are good rumors from the battlefront. Perhaps salvation is closing in.
Young people, like adults, reacted to the sudden change in their lives in a variety of ways and used their diaries as places to reflect on the larger meaning of their experiences. Ruthka Lieblich, at age 14, sounded a theme that appears in many diaries: the nature of Jewish survival and resilience in the face of centuries of persecution.
Sunday, October 10th, 1941. What did the Germans do to people? They expelled them from their fine, comfortable, bright and warm homes and put them into burrows. And we, wretched Jews, here in the new ghetto on the Shevska and a few other streets, will perish. All of us will perish in here with no access to town, food, or life. A persecuted, humiliated, impoverished, oppressed, tortured, and hapless people will be no more. With no country, friends, or land, Jews hold on only to their great God. Though repeatedly degraded and humiliated, Jews have endured through the millennia. Unable to live with their cruel now, they live in their yesterdays, in prayer, song, and melodies. The powerful spirit so unique to Jews and their history and tradition are mighty weapons in the hands of a presumably weak nation, enclosed and imprisoned in ghettos in order to subdue their courage and individualism. But this imprisonment is to no avail, for not the moral shackles, the ghettos, not even that, no use. After each persecution comes a revival, a new drive, a new life. A bright goal shines before us: liberation, freedom, eretz. And though our lives are complicated and astir, with countless obstacles, with God's help and our energetic youth, we will stride forward. We will fight. We will achieve our goal.
Not every written entry was poetic or high-minded. Often, young people confided the more mundane concerns of daily life in their diaries. Here, Janina Bauman, at age 15 in the Warsaw Ghetto, confessed to her diary a common problem of girls facing adolescence: a changing body and the simple desire for a new dress.
August 20th, 1941. I'm a beast. A callous hypocrite. Yesterday I had an argument with Mother. The matter was trivial. I've outgrown all of my summer dresses. They're too short and tight for me. No wonder. They were made for a 13-year-old with no breasts. Mother insisted I wear the one I can still squeeze into because it's loose. The silky red one. I've always hated it, ever since I got it 2 years ago. But I couldn't change Mother's mind by just saying I didn't like the dress. So I told her that if I walked the streets in bright red, I might easily be spotted by that crazy German who comes to the ghetto every day on his bike to shoot a few Jews dead in the crowd. That did the job instantly. Mother gave me one of her dresses to wear, a beautiful gray linen one. Now I look gorgeous and hate myself.
As time passed, young people periodically took stock of their lives in the pages of their diaries. reflecting on their changed circumstances and what was happening in the outside world. Halina Nelkin, writing at age 17 in the Krakow ghetto, touches on this powerful and familiar theme, describing the profound disconnect between life outside the ghetto and the stifling and restrictive existence Jews experienced inside its walls.
October 29th, 1941. Whatever has happened to us since the beginning of the war has left me, at first, astonished and dazed. It had been perhaps more perplexing than terrifying. The ghetto seemed something temporary, like a stay in the country during the vacations, some beautiful summer resort. The ghetto. Today I have reconciled myself to it, maybe only superficially, but I have. All the atrocities, orders, and prohibitions, the actions, roundups, and the sudden disappearance of people seem to me, how horrible, almost natural. I do not dare to recall that once life was different. My life before the war seems to me as unreal as a buttered roll, a glass of real tea with lemon and sugar, or the roasted thigh of a goose. Even this comparison itself proves how long it has been since I was really well fed. But it isn't just food that I yearn for, because right there, beyond the wall, is a different world. War or not, that world is free in its way. Children attend schools. Grown-ups work or go for a walk in the parks or window shop or listen to the bells from the Our Lady's church tower. These people ride in a streetcar through the ghetto and look at us with curiosity and contempt. They, the free people, the Aryans, rush by in trains along the railroad embankment just next to the wall and to our little courtyard balcony. And they do not know that here, in this cramped, walled-in cage, someone is suffocating and unable to understand why it is forbidden to walk around in the city in which one was born and in which one loves so much.
Hunger was a constant source of suffering in the Jewish ghettos of Nazi Europe. In addition to causing terrible physical pain, writers describe how extreme deprivation raised implacable moral dilemmas around survival and justice. In this entry, an anonymous young writer captured the strain of hunger on her family and her own sense of shame and recrimination when she succumbed to her hunger at the expense of her loved ones.
Wednesday, March 11th, 1942. This ration is much worse than the previous one. Terrible hunger is awaiting us again. There's no food. We're going to starve to death. All my teeth ache. I'm very hungry. My left leg is frostbitten. I ate almost all the honey. What have I done? I'm so selfish. What are they going to put on their bread now? What will they say? I must have a heart of stone. I'm ruthless. I eat everything I can lay my hands on. Today I had a fight with my father. I swore at him, even cursed him. It happened because yesterday I weighed 20 decagrams of noodles and then sneaked a spoonful. When my father came back, he immediately noticed that some noodles were missing. My father started yelling at me, and he was right. I became very upset and cursed my father. What have I done? I regret it so much, but it can't be undone. My father's not going to forgive me. How will I ever look him in the eyes? He stood by the window and cried like a baby. Not even a stranger has ever insulted him before. We would be a happy family if I didn't fight with everybody. All the fights are started by me. I must be manipulated by some evil force. I'd like to be different, but I don't have a strong enough will. There's nobody I can talk to. Why isn't there anybody who would guide me? Why can't anybody teach me? I hate my sister. She's a stranger to me. God, show me what is right.
Jews in the ghettos, young and old, sustained themselves and kept a connection to their former lives by organizing and participating in cultural activities. In the Terezin ghetto, outside Prague, there was a particularly vibrant and rich cultural life. Eva Mandlova, at age 21, wrote in her diary about a concert in Terezin and how it evoked both nostalgia and a flicker of resistance in the embattled ghetto population.
January 1st, 1942. There was a concert in the office this afternoon. Somebody played the accordion and somebody else sang. It was just like the old days. It was a strange feeling. Lots of people cried. We sang Czech and German songs. Freddie Hirsch gave a speech. He dared to say a lot of things like that we're at our lowest point now, that soon things will be better, and that there was never a ruler who lasted forever. About halfway through, we had to stop and all the men had to leave. The police broke it up.
Throughout their diaries, young people paused on birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays to reflect on the past and to consider what the future might hold. Elsa Binder, turning 21 in the Stanislavov ghetto in eastern Poland, wrote in her diary on New Year's Eve, reflecting on herself and her fears for survival. Like many writers forced to consider the very real possibility of dying young, she adopted a fatalistic tone, wishing, in the moment at least, more for liberation from suffering than for survival at any cost.
December 31st, 1941. Today is New Year's Eve, the last day of 1941, the end of my 21 years of life, so much at odds with the gods. I was endowed with a face that is basically not very impressive and rounded shoulders that charm even less. Due to the above factors, I am oversensitive, weak, and acrimonious. In other words, I have a difficult and rather unpleasant personality. I must add that I'm demanding and arbitrary toward other people. Right now, Jewish girls face the same odds. Death and prison pay no attention to external features. So many of my peers, better endowed than I, have followed their call. All of us are facing death, but I say I'm not afraid to die, although I long for life. It may seem naive, but I'm not sure whether all my dear ones who are dead might not be better off than I am today or will be tomorrow. I see them every night together, just as they perish together, and together they are resting. I see them happy smiling, and most of all, liberated. Really liberated once and for all. The winter is freezing. Frost knocks at the door with its skinny fingers. We have enough coal for a week and supplies for a month. And salvation is still far away. A very long winter. Under these conditions, our dreams of going out into the streets to welcome the liberators are less and less realistic. What are you bringing me? Long-awaited 1942. Wasn't that my favorite heroine, Catherine, who welcomed the outbreak of war with the words, "Welcome and be greeted, noble, happy year of 1914. So I welcome you, 1942. May you bring salvation and defeat. I welcome you, my longed-for year. Maybe you will be more propitious for our ancient miserable race whose fate lies in the hands of the unjust one. And one more thing. Whatever you're bringing for me, life or death, bring it fast."
Just 1 month later, Elsa returned to the same theme, this time with a considerably more hopeful perspective.
When fear crawls out in the evenings from all four corners, when the winter storm raging outside tells you it is winter and that it is difficult to live in the winter, when my soul trembles at the sight of distant fantasies, I shiver and say one word with every heartbeat, every pulse, every piece of my soul. Liberation. In such moments, it hardly matters where it is going to come from and who will bring it, so long as it's faster and comes sooner. Doubts are growing in my soul. Shh, quiet. Blessed be he who brings good news, no matter from where, no matter to where. Time, go ahead. Time which carries liberation in its unknown tomorrow. Not for Sip, who was happy to live in interesting times. Maybe not for me, but for someone like me. The result is certain. Down with any doubts. Everything comes to an end. Spring is coming.
In 1943, in the Lithuanian ghetto of Kovno, 18-year-old Ilya Gerber described how the ghetto inhabitants celebrated the arrival of the new year by enjoying themselves as they had in times past. Mocking the Germans' hateful anti-Jewish propaganda, Ilya recast their survival as an act of resistance.
We, the Jews, stand on the threshold of 1943. Of this year, it was said that the Jews will not see it. They will not survive that long. At the beginning of 1942, people were already saying in the ghetto that the Führer had stated that in 1943, you would have to look in a museum to find a Jew. The Jew, the people cursed by Der Stürmer as the criminal of all crimes, the one responsible for the World War, the betrayer of nations, the enemy of the people, the parasite who lives at the expense of others, the Bolshevik, the capitalist, the eternal exploiter upon whose head all curses are heaped, guilty of everything. He, yes, he has survived to a new year, the year 43. That is why our little Jews smashed glasses, said Mazel Tov to one another, and caroused. For a whole week they did not despair. They lived well. They ate. They gulped down. They snacked. They overcame their hard-heartedness. They didn't get enough sleep, let alone the young people. They want to take everything in. An old story. Der Stürmer writes the same thing. Jews want to take over the world and enslave and destroy everyone. And to carry on and dance and sing like in the good old days.
As years of imprisonment passed, young people in the ghettos often confided in their diaries their exhausted strength, and their wishes for survival and an end to suffering. Rivka Lipschitz of the Lodz ghetto was 14 when she wrote about losing her parents and her brother and sister. In this entry, her last one, Rivka dreamed about the simple pleasures of spring and its arrival, the freedom it evoked, and the possibility of a new life.
April 12th, 1944. Last night I was walking home. We registered for the courses and decided to join the library. I realized how beautiful youth was. If I only had a piece of paper, I'd have written something. At moments like this, I want to live so much. There is less sadness, but we're more aware of our miserable circumstances. Our souls are sad. And really, one needs a lot of strength in order not to give up. We look at this wonderful world, this beautiful spring, and at the same time, we see ourselves in the ghetto, deprived of everything. We are deprived of everything. We don't have the smallest joy because, unfortunately, we're machines with well-developed animal instincts. They're visible everywhere, mostly during the meals. It all affects us so much that we become duller and duller. Looking at us, one can see how much effort we need to create a better daily life in which... Why should I even write about it? I want it. I want it so much. When I realize that we're deprived of everything, that we're slaves, I try to put off this thought in order not to spoil this joyful little moment. How hard it is. Oh God, how much longer? I think that only when we are liberated will we enjoy a real spring. Oh, I miss this dear spring.
Many young writers recorded in their diaries the loss of close family members and friends, either through death or deportation to the unknown. Eva Ginzova, at age 14, had been in the Terezin ghetto with her adored older brother Peter for less than a year when he was called up for deportation. In this entry, Eva described the scene she witnessed at the collection point for the deportees and her last moments with her brother. She would never see him again.
September 28th, 1944. The train's already here, and both boys have already got on it. They're together in the same car. Peter's terribly calm, and Uncle is full of admiration for him. I hoped to the last minute that the train wouldn't come, even though I knew that it would. But what can be done? Just this morning, Hanka and I were with them at the Sluzka. It was a horrible sight that will stay with me forever. A crowd of women, children, and old men were pressed around the barracks to get a last look at their son, husband, father, or brother. The men leaning out of the windows were pressed one against the other to catch a glimpse of their dearest ones. But the barracks were guarded by police guards so that no one would escape. The men from the windows waved and said goodbye to their relatives with their looks. The sound of crying came from all around. We quickly ran home and brought the boys 2 slices of bread each so that they wouldn't be hungry. I pressed through the crowd, crawled under the rope that separated the crowd from the barracks, and passed Peter the bread through the window. I had enough time to hold his hand through the bars before a guard drove me away. Now the boys are gone. And the only thing left from them here is their empty beds.
In Lodz, Poland, 18-year-old David Szyrakowiak kept a diary for 4 years, beginning in 1939 and ending in April 1943. Though some notebooks are lost, the surviving ones chart his inexorable decline, from a bright, curious young man to a shadow of himself, orphaned, starved, and desperately trying to hold on to life. In this entry, he captures succinctly the endless grind of daily life and the repetitious struggle to outlast the Nazis and live to see liberation.
Tuesday, August 11th, 1942. Day after day passes. One buys rations, eats the little food that is in them, starves while eating it, and after that keep waiting obstinately, continuously, and unshakenly until the end of the cursed, devilish war. The workshop, home, meals, reading, night with bedbugs and cockroaches, and all over again without end, constantly losing strength with diminishing efficiency of body and mind. We keep dreaming, waiting, and counting, always with the same negative result, outraging all possible calculations and suppositions. We're fighting to survive until liberation, a goal as elusive as a phantom.
Diaries capture not only a writer's daily life, but also his or her unique, inimitable voice. For many, it remains the only trace of a life taken far too soon. We don't know the name or identity of this young writer from the Lodz ghetto, but within the pages of his diary, we hear his fury toward the Germans and his agonized questions about humanity, God, and the very meaning of life. His questions remain one that we must grapple with in the wake of the Holocaust and genocide.
27th of June, 1944. The situation is becoming more and more critical. As I write these words, I don't know if I will ever read them. Moreover, will anyone ever read them? It is impossible to describe my emotional state at present. I am angry and terribly embittered about this diabolical enemy of all humankind, the human race, my nation, the world, universe. Well, I guess that about covers it. Because I'm already, unfortunately, unwaveringly convinced that humanity, without exception, I believe, and the rest of it could behave in similar circumstances, much like the Germans, is a sordid rabble of greedy beasts devoid of any pity or mercy. Damned nationalism is only a vent for disgusting egoism and self-love. What kind of a world is this? What kind of people are these who can inflict such unbelievable and impossible suffering on living beings? Our nearest ones have been murdered, some by starvation, some by deportations, modern civilian death. We've been crippled and degraded physically, emotionally, and reduced to an existence of the most horrible misery and privation unprecedented in history. We are slaves, devoid of free will, who are happy when trodden upon and beg only that they not be trodden to death. We who would be happy if they only let us live, even as enslaved, wretched insects, as sordid, crawling reptiles, only to live, live, live. We truly deserve all those names, because we do not ourselves put an end to this disgraceful torment, but hold on to this miserable existence on this wretched earth. Even a fatalistic philosophy does not help survive a single moment in the Litzmannstadt ghetto with indifference. We are no longer human beings, nor have we become animals. We are simply a strange psychophysical creation made in Germany. Has modern humanity not proved wrong some preconceived plan in the creation of the universe? What kind of benevolent and provident intelligence could create something so monstrous?
Very, very few diaries written by young people survive from labor or concentration camps. The diary of 21-year-old David Kocher, interned in the labor camp Vught in Holland, is among those rare and precious records. In this entry, he captures the surreal experience of being arrested, wrenched away from normal life, and forced into the uncertainty of German incarceration.
Thursday, February 11th, 1943. Picked up between 11 and 12 p.m. One police officer decent but anxious, and one unpleasant. I heard them coming. On the way in the streetcar, I thought about the fact that every experience, especially a very serious one, seems like a dream when it happens, as it does when you reflect on the event afterwards and on the reflection. These words don't communicate it. They convey nothing of the impotence you feel as you consciously undergo what is happening. You see what's happening to you as if you're looking through a window. Slept in the train, leave, so immensely miserable and yet so indifferent towards it. After walking slowly for 2 hours, reached camp, glad it was dark. It must have been a sad procession. Limping people, crying children. Mother wept. I kept making contrived, cynical remarks, literarily contrived, but for the first time I felt cynicism coming from the heart. Here I felt deeply wretched. Tears in my eyes now and then. People alternate between optimism and despair. They like to make comparisons with home. The Germans are businesslike. They talk among themselves in an argumentative tone, a fierce reasonableness.
Leon Wells was interned in the Janowska camp in Poland at age 18. In June 1943, he was assigned to the so-called Death Brigade, which carried out the macabre task of disposing of the bodies of Jews murdered in the camp. Here, in his diary, Leon reflects on being separated from the rest of the camp inhabitants and the peculiar isolation of the 122 members of the brigade tasked with this inhuman work.
Tuesday, June 22nd, 1943. A prisoner sitting behind bars sees people on the outside and grieves because he is not free. But it is worse for him if he is sent to an island and is completely cut off from the rest of the world. Here, where we work, except for the bodies, our murderers, fires, hills, and sand, nothing exists. There is no connection with the community that exists in a concentration camp. One has a feeling that, except for one another and our assassins, we shall never see another living soul again. We 122 inmates share the same fate, work, and thoughts. Everyone thinks about being saved in order to revenge the death of our dear ones.
As a prisoner in Terezin, 17-year-old Alice Ehrman documented the final year of the war, a period when Jews everywhere knew that liberation was inevitable, but not if they would live to see it. In her diary, she captures the stubborn persistence of hope.
November 2nd, 1944. We live holding our breaths. We don't wait, we endure. I live as if at the brink of a finality. My mother, without news from us nor from father, alone like me, so terribly, cruelly alone, so that one knows that it can only be borne so long, and yet time has no end, ebbs away, and then once. Who knows in which concentration camp my love, my only true friend is, to whom I gave my life, no, wanted to give, since I haven't yet lived that much. I saw that last night, that it cannot be survived. I said that to myself in accordance with my best understanding logically. I tried to simply think this out to the end and to carry it within me like a child until its birth. Can I go on? To look at all my infinite days and ask, are you the day that will bring my end? If I had alcohol, I would drink myself into unconsciousness. If I could only say, I want to live, without thereby losing my balance and sense of resignation, I could be one of the naive ones who calls to you, the way one calls one's nursemaid after a nightmare. I am exiled in my knowledge on one hand, in my 17 years on the other.
Alice continued writing in her diary through the liberation of Terezin in May 1945, capturing the terrible contradictions of survival and death all around her.
May 10th, 1945. The Russians are in the ghetto. The Soviet flag flies over headquarters. The Red Cross sent 5 nurses. What a joke. Tomorrow, there will almost certainly be nothing left to eat. It's a miracle that there is anything today. People are insane, used up. Is it any wonder after 6 years of all this? What are we to them? To the Russians, we are simply a hospital city, and there is no other nurse except Ruth and another one. Night. Below, the barracks with half-lit windows, barbed wire, and skulls and crossbones everywhere. Typhus, rags, lousy blankets, and shoes lying about. And the stench, the endless stench of cattle cars and sluice gates. Here and there, a bent-over figure drags himself from barracks to barracks. Almost everyone has died. Only a few are still groaning, whimpering, and sobbing. And peace is breaking over this field of death.
On this 76th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, we pause to remember these 18 young writers whose words illuminate this impossibly dark past. They are among dozens of young people who found the courage to write themselves into history as refugees, in hiding, and in ghettos and camps throughout German-occupied Europe. At the same time, we remember the millions who were murdered, leaving no record behind, and we honor those who survived.